Thanks for tuning in, guys. Rick Shew, Bob Cesca, Freekbass. We're going to talk spoiler discussion with Flash. So if you haven't seen it, turn it off. If you have, let's chat.
Everybody come on, let's get down. Get down.
I really love that song.
Oh, me too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's always so cool to hear it on your, like in the context of your show. Yeah.
It really works. Like when you sent that over to me and I played it, I was like, really? That's the piece I get? That is fucking awesome. It's
great.
So good. And then my buddy with the way he did it with the video.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
And the logo. Anyway, it's
awesome.
all great. All right, guys. So welcome. How we doing? Everybody good?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Always. Bob Cesca, Freekbass. We'll do some plugs at the end. If you guys don't know who these guys are at this point, I don't know what's wrong with you. Not knowing who I am is one thing. These guys are legit. Okay, so let's just dive right in. We've got about 45 minutes here. I want to have an in-depth discussion about The Flash. And let's just say up front, not to say we won't reference things about the box office and everything. I know that's a big topic of conversation, but what we would rather do here is talk about the movie, what it meant to us, how we felt about it, etc. If you want to have a conversation about a box office, maybe the three of us will reconvene on that. And really, guys, I think we could probably do that once it's all said and done, right? Because who the hell knows where it's going to go anyway? You never know.
Yeah.
You never know. So Freak, you were the first to jump on. So let's let you roll first. Tell everybody when you saw it, how many times you've seen it, and just let it rip, man. What are your thoughts on the movie?
Okay, great. So I saw it the technical opening day on the Friday. I know that they're releasing Thursdays, actually, like the early opening day. But yeah, that first weekend it was open on the Friday. Luckily, I was like doing everything I could to avoid any spoilers. I was looking at Twitter with half an eye closed every time I was on there. So I went in there pretty fresh. I'd just seen just the trailer and that for those first couple trailers, and that was it. And I told you guys both this with a little DM message is that when I walked out of there, I felt like a kid, and I don't mean like oh my gosh, I'm seeing Michael Keaton again. I feel like a little kid again. I don't mean it like that kind of way. I mean it like the wonderment of watching it. Like the movie struck me in just like I was in the movie. I felt like I understood why I was a DC fan, why I was a comic book fan. Like it pressed all those buttons. Emotionally, I must have teared up and probably outwardly cried in that last. Are we doing spoilers yet, or should I?
Yeah, in fact, I just took the banner off so everybody can see our names here. But yes, 100% spoiler. Like I said, if you haven't seen it and don't want spoilers, log off.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
Great. So that final scene when he's with his mom at the grocery store and he has to make that choice to grab the can of tomatoes back on the shelf, which is obviously going to make her her disappear from existence. That was just such an incredible scene. I thought Ezra Miller, get rid of all the baggage, but his performance was unbelievable. Not just his individual performances, but the way interacting with, those felt when I was watching it like I was watching two different actors, even though it was the same actor. It was almost like the Christopher Reeve thing with Clark Kent in the original Superman, to where like this is not the same guy doing the same part. It felt like he really, really had both those characters down, and it didn't feel like I was watching like a split screen when they talk to each other. Sasha Kaye, I believe is the way you pronounce her last name, just like I predicted on her show here a few weeks ago. I still feel like she's the breakout star from that. I know it was a lot smaller part than I was expecting with her, but she just popped off that screen. I really, really hope that James Gunn's going to continue on with her in his universe. And Cage and Clooney. What else can that? I think you and I both just said those one words.
Did you say Cage as in Nicolas Cage?
Yeah, Cage and Clooney. Yeah. That was just goosebumps when I saw that scene. I actually was. I don't know, guys, if you guys remember this or you were part of this, but they actually had I think it was a Kickstarter fund for the making of the Superman Lives movie that when it came back, this was like maybe like 10 years ago, and I was one of the people that donated to that, for that fund. So I was very, very aware of that whole movie, and watched that movie, that the documentary on that 1,000 times, and so that was so incredible. And the George Clooney, I'm not a fan at all of Batman and Robin, but as we've discussed here on the show, I've always thought Clooney was just an incredible Bruce Wayne, and that ending scene when he comes out of the car was just, I mean, it was perfect. I loved it. And just overall, I think the last thing I'll say, and I'll let Bob jump on here, but I think, and this is not to talk about box office, this is regardless of box office.
No, it's okay to reference it, man. It's natural.
But I think the rewatchability, I think this is going to be possibly almost like the first Spider-Verse movie, to where once it gets to streaming and gets to HBO Max, Max, it's going to, I think this is going to have legs, and that it may be 2 years, it may be 3 years, but I think the rewatchability, I think this movie is going to age very, very well, in my opinion.
Well, on that note, I'll say this and see if you guys agree, right? So we talk about box office in the now, because that's just the world we live in, unfortunately, especially on social media.
Yeah.
But when we reflect on films that we love from 5, 10, 20 years ago, I don't have a clue where some of those films are box office wise. I don't have no idea, and I don't care.
Yeah.
And ultimately that's really what matters. All the box office chatter has ramifications, obviously, but per the top of the show, this is just about our love for the film. And I agree. And I will tell you about the Clooney cameo at the end. And I'll say this, that was originally supposed to be Keaton. It was already filmed.
Right.
And Supergirl's in that scene. Again, that's almost another conversation for another day. That is a frustrating part of this whole thing for me in terms of Keaton. But on that note, I'll just say this real quick. I want to turn this to Bob, but I'll just say I didn't love this movie when I saw it the first time. I had a lot of issues, and my problem was, and I realized it when I saw it again, was that I fell into the trap that I preach about, where I know too much about the behind the scenes and the changes, and I let that affect the way I looked at the movie.
Yeah.
So the second time I said, don't do that. Don't, do what you preach. And I didn't. And so that last scene with Clooney, now I guess I really kind of always loved it, but what a sport for him to do that too, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because he's just been self-deprecating about that his whole nice little pop up there. His whole career. It's really funny. And then I like when Ezra's like, "Who the fuck are you?" It's a one F-bomb in the movie, I think.
Last thing I would say about the Clooney thing, man. Clooney's one of those guys that he's like, the older he gets, the better he looks. I mean, he almost looked kind of like, when he was young, he looked almost a little, kind of awkward and weird. And like
Facts
now,
of Life.
Yeah, Facts of Life days, exactly. And now, dude is like, man, it's like, what,
62. He's 62 years
what
old.
vitamins are you taking, man? He just looks better all the time. Yeah,
he's a stud.
He really is.
I remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
He doesn't wear makeup. He doesn't have makeup applied when he does roles. He goes in with his doesn't have anyone touch his face. It's incredible. Well, not because he's weird about people touching his face. He just doesn't need it. Doesn't need the makeup.
Clooney's
make me hate him more, Bob. Thanks.
You guys know I'm a Cincinnati guy, and the Clooney's here are like, legends here. We're from Cincinnati because his dad was like a huge newscaster here. Like my mom tells me, like for years and years, and Rosemary Clooney's from this area too. So they're like legends in this and he, and George went to Northern Kentucky, which is basically the Twin City of Cincinnati. So they're kind of a big icons here in the city.
They are the Matthew McConaughey of Ohio, right?
There you go. That's it.
Because he's a god here. All right, Mr. Cesca, what's up, buddy?
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
This was God. I just, the headline for me and The Flash is, it was fun. First of all, it was the first movie I had seen in a movie theater since Rise of Skywalker in
2019.
Yeah,
Ooh,
so I'm back.
Wild.
I'm back.
What was that like? Just real quick, was that weird?
Not going to movie theaters?
Well, I mean, going back to one, returning to one.
Oh, going back to one. Yes, it was weird. It was kind of, I forgot about a couple of things. I forgot about all of the regular kind of TV style commercials that they now run before.
Right.
And I also forgot. And I'm someone who wears headphones all day, so I'm accustomed to volume, loudness. I forgot how loud these movies were. In fact, when I first heard, like, there was a Regal Cinemas thing that came up with like this booming bass drum and everything, like, oh my God, there's something wrong in the booth. Why is this so loud? And I felt like that, that Abe Simpson meme where he's It's so loud, but he's so deaf that he starts screaming, "Turn it up, turn it up," and with the THX logo. But no, in all seriousness, it was. I was amazed by how much fun I had watching this movie. I laughed. In fact, I surprised myself over the number of times that I was laughing. And I don't know what that says about an action adventure movie. I don't know if you're supposed to laugh that many times, but I know that with comic book movies now, comedy is a big part of it. That's part of the formula, so to speak. The other thing was I went in with somewhat low expectations. I wasn't as knocked out by as a lot of people were with the trailers. Obviously, it's exciting that Michael Keaton is back as Batman. I wasn't thrilled with the look of the new Batman. I think we've talked about this, or I've mentioned it at least on this show a couple of times in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so I think that was my headspace going in. And when that babies scene started, that's what won me over with this movie. I know, like Ryan Airy over at Screen Crush was like, "Oh, that's silly. Why do they do the baby scene? It was so ridiculous." I looked at it in a different way. This is a mainstream comic book movie tentpole release. And within the first 10 minutes, they endangered a dozen babies.
It's a baby shower.
Yeah, well, that was dumb. I didn't like that.
Oh,
joke.
really?
But, yeah,
I like it.
but I like.
I'm guilty. I liked it.
I like the wickedness of endangering all those babies, throwing them out the window. The Flash is just like the Flash movie itself, and Andy Muschietti and the writers were like, okay, you know what? We're going to throw a dozen babies out the window within the first 10 minutes. And then the Flash is going to have to save them from scalpels and all these things, the projectiles about to kill them. And I felt like it was right out of the chute. It was like a James Gunn kind of thing. Like I could absolutely see, and I know this is a separate universe from the forthcoming DCU, but I felt like that was like a thing that James Gunn would do. Okay, you know, what's the most wicked thing that could happen to human beings in the first 10 minutes of the movie that the Flash has to rescue them from? We're going to throw babies out the window. And then there's going to be like a scalpel that's careening toward one of the babies, and the Flash has to knock the scalpel out of the way. All of that stuff.
Putting the baby in the microwave.
Yeah, exactly, like the baby in the microwave.
The baby in the microwave. It saved its life.
Yeah. Andy
Saved it from
Muschietti
heat.
put a baby in a goddamn microwave. And so that's what I said, okay, now I think we're into something with this movie. I think now the stakes are astronomical as far as what can possibly happen in this film if they're going to endanger babies in the first 10 minutes. I think it's just a matter of perspective. But anyway.
No, it's great. Yeah, I think you text something like it was naughty, very James Gunn naughty. Is that fair?
Yeah,
devilish. Yeah. I agree.
That's how I
I love it too.
Yeah, and so from that point forward, I was in it and enjoying it, and I was surprised that I was enjoying it. It was one of those things where every time I'd laugh out loud, I would kind of make a mental note. Wow, okay, this is maybe the 6th or 7th time I've laughed out loud. And I don't often do that with these movies, partly because, and this speaks to my low expectations, I feel as though part of the problem with comic book movies now is, and this speaks to our conversation about superhero fatigue or whatever we were calling it, it's becoming, I think these movies are becoming a little bit too formulaic. I think they're resting on a certain kind of storytelling where certain beats are happening. And with this movie, I think it deviated from that a little bit. And also the acting was so superb. And when it comes to, there's a lot of baggage, obviously. Freak, you talked about this a little bit. A lot of baggage circulating around Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
And that, I think, to me, it didn't distract from the movie all that much because the interplay between Ezra and the other Ezra, between Barry and the other Barry, was so good. I was in it. As you said, Freak, I was totally sold on that. Those were some of the funniest scenes, too. I thought I was going to be annoyed by younger Barry, by 2013 Barry, but I was laughing too much to get annoyed. I didn't like the way Barry was treated in the theatrical cut of Justice League. I didn't like that kind of style for that character. And the younger Barry had a little bit of that in this movie, but it wasn't as annoying as I thought it was going to be. But I know, Rick, you were talking about that in one of your threads, and the bro nature of young Barry. And,
just a little bit.
Yeah.
I liked it for the most part. I laughed too. I think some of the stuff where they meet for the first time in the house,
Yeah.
and he's like, do the thing, and it's broskies, and it was like a little too 80s, like Charles and Chargy or something. You know what I mean? Like surfer 80s caricature stuff. But it didn't last very long. I mean, it's a minor quibble. Overall, it was really funny.
You know, it felt like Multiplicity. Some of the interplay between Barry Prime and the younger Barry felt a little bit like Michael Keaton interacting with one of his doppelgangers in Multiplicity. I think that it was that level of, well, this is a really annoying character, but because of the way the main Barry is handling this other character, it kind of smooths out the rough edges of that second Barry being super duper annoying. So in that regard, is great. Sasha Callier was wonderful in this. I agree with you, Rick. I wish there was more for her to do in this movie.
Yeah.
I wish there was, I think, going to Ryan Airy again at Screen Crush, he said something to the effect of, you could have taken Supergirl out of this movie and it probably wouldn't have changed the overall narrative from beginning to end. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think there are certain considerations as far as the multiverse goes and where's Superman in this Justice League formula and so on. So her presence answered a lot of questions, and she was really damn good. So I hope that she continues on in James Gunn's DCU and becomes Supergirl in that context. One thing I noticed, and I'm not sure if this is getting a lot of discussion, I'm not sure even if James Gunn has addressed this at all, but there's a lot of debate over what Justice League version is canon in the DCEU. And at this point, ultimately, it doesn't really matter because the DCEU is ending. However, there were at least 2 references to the Snyder Cut in this movie. There was one with Iris West where she was like, I vaguely remember seeing you somewhere recently. What was that? And he was like, oh, we knew each other in college. Like he was trying to cover up the fact that he rescued her in that car crash, which was only in the Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
That wasn't in the theatrical version. Iris West was not anywhere in the theatrical cut of that movie. And then,
like if you don't read, you're exactly right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and then the second reference to the Snyder Cut came from Ben Affleck, came from Bruce Wayne. He was talking about Barry messing with time travel in Russia. And that's another thing that only happened in the Snyder Cut. That whole thing with the Speed Force only happened in Zack Snyder's Justice League. So now this movie that's essentially capping off the DCEU is now directly referencing things that only happened in the Snyder Cut. So in that regard, maybe it was Muschietti trying to get something in there out of maybe some sort of deference to Zack Snyder. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's official or not. But at least in terms of the storytelling, it seems as though the Snyder Cut is now canon in the DCEU.
Well, let's just take it a step further. And really with the whole multiverse thing anyway, sky's the limit.
Why not? Why not?
Right. I mean Kevin Smith's Superman film, Tim Burton directed it apparently. It exists. It's there.
Well, and also the Snyder Cut did better, whether you like that or not, whether you prefer that movie over theatrical. I vastly prefer the Snyder Cut over the theatrical cut of Justice League. But regardless of that, it did better. It was better received. The Snyder Cut had a better Rotten Tomatoes score, and it was better reviewed. And we don't know what the numbers are because streaming is such an opaque mystery these days. But I think it's probably beneficial for the DCEU to attach itself to the Snyder Cut over. Plus, it's an olive branch to the toxic fanboys. So maybe there's something there. Maybe there's an element to that too.
Sure. And just for the record, just my own personal opinion, you shave off about an hour. I think I would have a much more fair sort of comparison. I much prefer Batman in the Snyder Cut. I actually still prefer Superman in Justice League. I know the lip. It's awful.
Yeah.
But the performance,
it's
there's
hard
some
to look at.
there's some great Superman moments in that film with the fucked up lip.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Hard to get past
that's
that, but
yeah,
yeah.
it's hard. It's hard. But that's a great point.
Hey, real quick, I want to say we were talking about multiverse so much, and this is one of my notes and my thing I didn't mention is the one thing that I would say about the way the multiverse was explained, especially the way Keaton did it with the whole spaghetti little scenario there when they were at the house.
So good, by the way.
Yeah, oh, it was great. And the I think DC, and I'm a huge Marvel fan, so this is not throwing shade at Marvel, but unless you are kind of in the comic world and very much a CBM person like we are, the multiverse, I always use my mom as an explanation. If my mom can get it, then the GA can get it. And my mom, with the multiverse explanation in this movie, she would understand the concept of multiverse. In Marvel's universe, I'm not so sure she would, just because it's so this character and this variant and this It's very, very wide. Some would say convoluted, but I'll say wide to be nicer. Where in the DC, it was almost like a Back to the Future approach, where it was very, in my opinion, digestible, the whole multiverse concept.
Yeah. And by the way, I love the Back to the Future subplot.
Oh, with the Eric Stoltz thing.
Eric Stoltz. Yeah. I love that they keep coming back to that. I was curious though. The second Barry, the younger Barry, kept using this slang term "beeve." Did we ever figure out what beeve is? Because in fact, Prime Barry was like, "What is beeve? Why do you keep saying beeve?"
Oh yeah, that's a great point.
Describing things as beeve. Yeah,
I don't know.
I was wondering if maybe that's a Stoltz thing. Maybe that was from the alternate Back to the Future.
Oh, that'd be a deep
timeline.
cut if they did that. Yeah.
And well, here's $1 million question. In that universe, did Eric Stoltz do 2 and 3? Was he in the old Wild West and the future?
Yeah.
I don't know.
We didn't get a sense of how well Back to the Future did with Eric Stoltz.
I don't think it did as well. I think there's one, but I think it has a cult following.
Yeah, there you go.
It's Office Space.
Speaking of multiverses, and this is up for debate. I was kind of, when I first saw it, I mentioned something in our private conversation about the Batcave and whether we're really looking at the Burton-verse when it came to Michael Keaton's Batman. And I kept thinking about that waterfall in that cave opening. Right. And it looks so similar to the Nolan-verse Batcave. However, and so that made me think that, maybe this isn't exactly the Burton-verse. Maybe there is another universe where it's fedoras and that mixture of 70s vehicles and 40s costumes and things like that. That very unique, obvious Tim Burton style. And then I thought about it a little bit more, and I think that's just the opening for the Batwing, which we never really saw in the Burton-verse. We never saw in the first Batman 89 or Batman Returns. So I'm kind of backpedaling on this notion that, it wasn't the Burton-verse. Maybe there's another Batman somewhere.
A couple things on that, if I may. One, I had a buddy point out to me, and I have not cross-referenced this yet, that he swears that Joker's laughing box. Remember when Barry brings it? Look at this thing get laughs.
Yeah.
It's a great moment. He said it's a different color.
Mm-hmm.
One's purple, one's green, or whichever the way around. That's interesting. And on that note, if I may, I'll just say this real quick. The things I loved about this movie the most at the end of the day was the stuff with Barry and his mom and dad both. And you don't have to be a parent. We're all sons and daughters, whether or not we ever had a relationship with the parents or knew our parents, whatever. But obviously not all of us are parents, but you don't even have to have that. It's just, if you have a heart and you have some humanity, right?
Yeah.
My God. I mean, and then I don't know the actress's name, but the woman that plays his mom, dude. And I'm a big Billy Crudup fan, by the way. And I was disappointed that he wasn't returning, but I always go blank on the actor's name. Who plays his dad
Ron
in this
Livingston.
one? Yeah. Ron Livingston.
Yeah.
I just referenced Office Space. In fact, there you go.
Yeah.
All came back around to Office Space. He was so good. I mean, he really was great. And that last scene that you referenced, Freak, when he takes the can of tomatoes out of the cart after he watched himself put back in, that's a really bold thing to do. And what I mean by that is he has to let his mother get murdered for the better sake of the fucking universe.
Yeah.
And it's terribly tragic. Yeah. And that whole thing, I love that from the beginning. The reason I gave it a B- and had issues with it was Batman. So if I could piggyback on this, so the Keaton Batman stuff, I felt like he was cheated. I felt like we were introduced to him and then he's dead. And then again, I know that they had plans for him. He was supposed to be in the ending of the movie, in fact. And I was like, how do you bring back him and kill him? Just like he's gone. He's not in Batgirl. These things don't exist. But maybe he's not technically the Burton Batman per se. Mm-hmm. And to Bob's point. And so that opens up that door with the multiverse stuff and everything. Once I was able to let that go and sort of accept that, I really thoroughly enjoyed everything about him in that movie. Yes, I want more. And I saw did you guys see the scenes or the screenshots from Batgirl that came out?
I know. Yeah.
And that looks just like the 89 costume too. It's even, it's hard, man. That's brutal. That we may not ever see that.
Yeah.
But my God. And really,
I think we'll eventually see it. I think they'll eventually drop it as sort of either as a bonus disc with the Flash or something. It just seems ludicrous that they've got this thing and they don't want to monetize it at all. Even if they just make a teeny tiny amount of money, defer. I know I hate talking about the business side of things, but it makes sense to at least put it out there in some way. And stranger things have happened, of course.
You're right.
Snyder Cut, you know.
You're right. And I hope so. And the black label thing that Gunn has opens up a door for all kinds of possibilities. I just wondered, I don't know Michael Keaton personally, never met the man. Would love to, but never have. Is he disgruntled at all by all this? Probably not, because I don't think he really gives a shit at the end of the day. He's like, whatever, I just get my paychecks, and that's kind of him. That's what's appealing about it. But at the end, he was sort of promised this platform, and then Batgirl gets scraped. That's a big kick in the balls. And then the future for him is uncertain now at this point. And then there was obviously a lot of stuff cut out of the Flash. Now, it's an editing medium as much as it is a director's medium, especially depending on the director. If you're Steven Spielberg, you call all the shots. But so I understand that things end up on the cutting floor, and we've all seen. I mean, like there's some like that great scene in The Last Jedi where Luke is like mourning Han's death. You watch some things like that, like why is that not in the movie? That makes no sense. But that's just the nature of things. Editing is a tough deal. So I understand that not all the scenes are going to be in there, but it wasn't just a scene taken out. It altered the promise of him more. But ultimately the performance is great, and really even his death when he says, I'm trying to bring you back or whatever, or I can't bring you back, whatever he says to him, he says you already have. Yeah. And I thought, what a cool, if he's got to go out, and again, they're still with the multiverse and everything else, we may get him again. But that's a really badass moment. And to come back around, you talked about Freak, I think it was you that talked about the waterfall and looked very Nolan. I agree. And I will say that, frankly, I think that even the old, hermit Bruce Wayne reminded me of The Dark Knight Rises, and obviously under different circumstances. And I talked to Ryan Haas from BOF about this actually. And he brought this up to me, and I agreed that there's some, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but there are parallels there with Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne and The Flash, and Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne at the top of The Dark Knight Rises. I thought that was a cool tie-in. Yeah. And to see both those actors, who in my opinion are the two greatest actors to play the part in terms of just actors, and to both kind of be in the same place, albeit different circumstances.
Well, really, the believability of, I was still, I was all in the Michael Keaton camp, believe me. But I was kind of like, he is 70. And it's like, is this really going to look weird? A 70-year-old guy putting on a Batman outfit, jumping around, totally believed, like it was totally believable. They didn't shy away from the age thing. They almost kind of embraced it. And, it was great. The moves were incredible.
Well, when they were in Russia and he was, going to rescue Supergirl, he's standing up. He looks down, he's like, "Oh, this is going to hurt." And by the way, that shot of him, when I saw that the first time, I went, "Was that looked like George Clooney to me?" And that scene where he says that, just throwing that out there. I know it's not, but it was just a weird moment. And then to see Clooney at the end of it, it was jarring. Yeah. But that's a funny moment. Like, oh, this is going to hurt. 'Cause I'm old. He knows he's old.
Right. When he's patching himself up, like he was almost enjoying the fact that I got like enjoying that moment, like oh, I missed this,
and that's another Nolan thing to me.
I know what you're talking.
But you're right, I didn't catch this the first time I saw it. When I saw it the second time, because I went from liking it to loving it. By the way,
Yeah.
when he looks up at himself in the mirror and kind of smiles, like, "That's right, I'm back."
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Bob,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about? He's giving the stitches to
Oh
himself.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's
great.
I recognize that callback right away.
Yeah.
A couple of things about Michael Keaton too. First of all, in this movie, the bat suit is better in the movie than it is on Instagram in photographs.
Yeah.
It doesn't still photograph very well. That's one thing I discovered. If you're a purist as far as the costumes go, the superhero costumes, it looks a lot better in the movie, in motion. I think those of you who haven't seen it yet will appreciate it more once you see it in action, the bat costume.
I agree.
Or Batman costume. And so the other thing I want to mention too, I think this speaks to perhaps why this great movie hasn't been as well received as everyone was expecting. And I think it was a marketing problem. I think they should have kept the Michael Keaton thing completely secret. And I understand wanting to build a hype machine, but can you imagine if this had been a surprise? Suddenly, Michael Keaton's Batman shows up in this movie. Imagine not even knowing that was going to happen.
Yeah, that would have been.
I think so many people who went to see this movie already knew it was going to happen. In fact, I think when you first are introduced to Bruce Wayne, or Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne, they don't show his face right away.
Right.
And then it seems almost though there was a pause for applause, like an audience break when you first see him, when you first see his face and realize, oh my God, that's Michael Keaton. And so I almost feel as though the movie was made for Michael Keaton to be a surprise. And when that didn't quite work out because they needed to promote the movie and build up hype for it, I think it undermined that surprise. So maybe that was a factor in all of this, but ultimately I don't care because I still enjoyed the movie.
Well, and it could be something to do with the fact that highlighting the star who's a negative headline magnet could also be why they shifted gears on him too. Who knows? But let's talk about one more thing here in the 15 minutes we have left. So we've talked about Michael Keaton's Batman. We talked about Ezra Miller, who I agree is great. Really great. And you mentioned multiplicity. I know I've said this before. I'd still love to be on the fly on the wall. Like surely Keaton was on set giving some tips on how to do the acting with yourself and everything. Is he does it with like five. He ends up with like five brothers on multiplicity, right?
I think there are two. I think there are two other versions, or maybe three.
There's at least two more. No, there's three because there's the sensitive guy. There's the guy there's the brother that's mentally impaired.
There's three copies,
and then there's the sex drive, the bad boy brother, right?
Yeah.
So my cat just jumped up. So hello, he's going to join us here. But let's talk about the other Batman. And this was Affleck's very likely last performance. I would have liked to have a little bit more than what we got. But I will say that I really enjoyed seeing him again. I love that whole opening sequence. I love that we got to see his Batman truly in charge of the Justice League and how that really all looked. And I got to get rid of this dude before he unplugs stuff. Go away. Love you, buddy, but go away. But the scene where, and that whole opening sequence is great, but the scene where he is talking to Barry about the universe, about himself, reflecting and said, I've got a lot of scars. I've made a lot of mistakes and I ended up alone. There's a lot of parallels in that film with conversations that Bruce has with Barry, Michael Keaton's Bruce, that tie into that conversation. And I missed that the first time because I had to take a bathroom break at one point. And so I didn't see the scene where Michael Keaton walks into the Batcave and is talking to Barry about, I don't know who I would be without the tragedy of losing my parents and that whole thing.
Oh, right.
And I watched that the second time going, whoa, what the parallels are just amazing. Yeah. So anyway, as both of you guys are big fans of Snyderverse and Affleck and everything, what was y'all's thoughts, Bob? What was your thoughts on Batfleck?
I thought as a performance, Ben Affleck was great. I've always liked Ben Affleck's Batman. The costume fell apart for me, and as I've illustrated on a number of occasions in this conversation, I'm a real nitpicker when it comes to the superhero costume designs. And I love the blue and the gray. I like that was back.
Sure.
But the Ben Affleck Batman suit looked a little bit rubbery and cheap to me. and I understand why it was the way it was, but it was okay. But I did love the interaction between Wonder Woman, Batman, and the Flash on that bridge, and
It's great.
the lasso of truth and all the confessions that took place.
That's
in
so
that
great.
moment. So funny. Yeah, that was one of the laugh out loud moments of the movie. And so overall good, but you can tell that they're running out of steam with those characters. And I don't know. It was a difficult thing to kind of evaluate because we don't know. It's a different style. The Ben Affleck Batman costume was designed with a certain kind of photography in mind, Zack Snyder's photography. And then when you start to take that out and put it into a different world, it kind of falls apart a little bit. But other than that, I thought it was great. I thought Ben Affleck was great.
Yeah, he is great. And again, I think I like the Bruce Wayne stuff almost better than the Batman stuff in that film. But I do really like the scene where he's talking to Barry. He comes out of the truck on his Bat Pod. And I like when the guy runs off, he just throws the batarang, knocks him out, and then it's good. It's really good. I would like to see a little more, and I was still maybe the fanboy in me was hoping for maybe one scene with the two of them, but it makes sense that it wasn't. Well, with the time we have left here, these last few minutes, so Freak, let's wrap up our thoughts on this film. So
I want to circle back really quick. As you mentioned that too, something Bob said about this, going back to the baby scene too as well, because a lot of the discussion, not about if it's not the box office, it's about the special effects. That's usually those are the two big controversial things on Twitter right now about the movie. And the thing I loved about the baby scene too is, in my opinion, it set up the way that the VFX were supposed to look. If you remember when the babies were falling out the window, when they were actually falling, they kind of did this like pseudo, cartoonish kind of version with they didn't look like real babies, and I'm sure that was a director's conscious choice for many reasons. But to me, that kind of set up anytime Barry went into his, time travel type stuff, that all the effects kind of had that kind of whatever that filter was they were using, that kind of look, kind of almost cartoonish, but not quite. Yeah. And again, I think Machete probably had almost an unlimited budget, what he wanted. And I think that the baby thing kind of set up the rest of the movie in a very, I didn't watch the rest of the movie and I didn't feel jarred at all because it was already kind of set up with the baby scene.
I agree. It's very stylized, and you're in that. You're looking at it in the what's the terminology here? I just went blank.
Speed Force.
The Speed Force. Thank you. You're looking at it through the eyes of the Speed Force, and everything's weird. And
I think if you would have kept it just totally like real people, whether the baby scene or any other Speed Force scene, it had the danger of looking like X-Men. When they slow down with the X-Men thing too, as well.
Well, and to one thing we haven't addressed yet, to mention this as we're on our way out, is that when it went into the flashes of the multiverse, the first thing I saw was George Reeves Superman, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
And then that
was a surprise too. I didn't know that was going to happen. Yeah.
And then you see Adam West, you hear Cesar Romero laughing. You get Chris Reeve and who's the young lady?
Helen Slater.
Helen Slater played Super. Yeah. Oh, that was cool to have her Supergirl show up next to him too.
Right. And the CG looked great for those two. I thought it looked realistic. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought all that really worked. And of course the Nick Cage thing, fighting the giant spider.
Yeah.
I personally, and I've said this, I don't no disrespect to anybody, including you guys, especially you guys, I should say. I don't understand. I don't think there's a goddamn thing wrong with the way this movie looks. I think it looks great. And I think all that stuff that we're talking about is a stylized choice. Now, you may not like the stylized choice. That's cool.
Right.
But I did. And I watched it. I saw it. And then I saw it again in IMAX. And I'm sitting there going, am I supposed to not like the way this looks? Because I love the way this movie looks.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to add, as far as that goes, while we're still talking about the CG, is there is a thing happening behind the scenes with CG artists these days, and they're getting overworked.
Yeah.
They're getting screwed when it comes to money. Obviously, we're looking at way more effect shots these days than we did even 10 years ago, to an extent. And so they're in a crunch right now, and I think sometimes that manifests itself in, some shots not looking as great, because we're talking about CG shots or CG work in a single movie being spread out across several different visual effects studios. And so it's not just like ILM doing all the effects for a particular movie. It's ILM and this group and this other group and this other group. And so there's maybe a consistency and budget and time constraint issue with the CG artists right now. There are some amazing CG artists. It's great now with the internet that you can access globally the best artists in the world. But at the same time, I think studios are expecting too much for not enough money. And that is an ongoing issue. If you ever see someone with their avatar as just a green screen on social media, that's a signal that that person is interested in helping CG artists and pushing back against studios short shrifting them. And that's a serious issue. There's hardly any CG work happening in these movies domestically. It's now being outsourced and so on. So lots of controversies going on in the CG community behind the scenes. So I'm very careful about not blaming the CG if a movie doesn't do as well as we expected. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. Sure. No, that's a very fair point. We're in the middle of this writer strike right now, so it's all very real. But again, I thought it looked great. But I want to say on some closing thoughts here, just for me, is that here's the bottom line. And I have a Twitter thread about this right now. I have my own opinions, my own analysis. They're just mine, and they mean virtually nothing. But at the end of the day, shut out all the noise, guys, and go see this movie. When you laugh, cry, clap, cry again, cheer, laugh again, and I laughed my ass off on that post-credit scene. Sue me. I know it was pointless, but it was hilarious. Yeah. And then when Momoa passes out in the water and Barry looks at him, is like, he doesn't say it, but in his mind, it's like, well, fuck it. He'll be okay. He's Aquaman. He's face down in the water. Yeah. He's in his element. Yeah. I mean, what else do you want? What else do you want in a movie? I mean, to have that, all those emotions and everything. And as a Batman fan, it's great fun to see Affleck and Keaton do what they do. So anyway, those are my final thoughts.
Yeah, Lorne Michaels has this great quote where, when talking about his movies, the movie versions of SNL characters or SNL cast members who went on to do some movie that Lorne Michaels produced, is the best review that you can possibly have for a movie is, it was fun. Mm-hmm. And The Flash, for me, was fun. If you just set aside your biases when it comes to this universe or that universe, or Snyder versus Joss Whedon or this or that, and just go in and have a good time watching a comic book movie, this is a fun 2.5 hours to spend in a movie theater. I can't emphasize that enough.
And that's what I mean about me being a kid. That's how I felt. I felt like I was like 10 years old watching, a Batman '89 again or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I like that.
Don't expect a Francis Ford Coppola sort of Stanley Kubrick version of some sort of comic book movie. Go in expecting fun, and this was a fun movie.
And it has a big, huge, giant heart.
Yeah.
Freak, and on your final thoughts, I just want to say, I love the way you characterized where you said this makes me feel like a kid, but it wasn't just direct nostalgia about Batman '89. It was about that feeling that Batman '89 gave you.
Yes.
It wasn't because Michael Keaton was back necessarily. Correct. It was just that same feeling. And that's a much bigger thing than just, oh, look, it's that guy again.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So anyway, just want to point that out. Any just final thoughts on your end, sir?
Just everything you said. I mean, I go see the movie. I agree with Bob. It's a fun movie. And again, like I said when I was talking about at the beginning, I really think this movie is going to age very well. I think we'll still be talking about this movie 5-10 years. Every time it's one of those movies like, I'm not going to put up with like Shawshank or something like that. But I guarantee you, when it shows up on TNT or whatever whatever kind of cable we have 5 years from now, we're going to be I'm going to sit here and watch 20 minutes of this. That's going to be like, just like when Back to the Future pops on AMC or whatever, You
don't turn it off. That's right.
Yeah.
All right, Freak, where can we find you, sir?
I'm live online like we all do right now. I'm probably every single night, Sunday through Friday. Saturday's my only day off. I'm on TikTok, and that's at Freekbass, 10 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Pacific, making lots of funky sounds on there.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Bob, where can we find you, sir?
Brand new episode of Trek Politics with me and Mary Trump is out today. We talked to Jerry Ryan this week. We talked about Strange New World Season 2, Episode 1. Had a lot of positive things to say about that, and I had a big nitpick in that episode, and I describe it almost to a point of being psychotic about it. But that's sometimes we do that, don't we? So that's out right now everywhere you get your podcasts and at trekpolitics.com.
I'm so happy for you, man. That's the coolest thing in the world.
Love it.
Thank you.
It is. And I'm Rick Shew on behalf of Courtney Cheek and Brian Chatelain. The three of us, by the way, are finally coming back together to do a show next Wednesday morning. So check that out. And they're back in the fold. They've both been really busy, but I need them. I want them, and they're on their way back. So the show will be complete with them. I've got to jump before this cat ruins my computer and my mic and everything. I don't know how he made his way up here, but he made his way upstairs. So I got to run anyway. Thanks so much, guys, for watching.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, guys. Thank everybody. Go see The Flash. Go see The Flash. Over now.